range in Sri Lanka. Now, next I'm going to show you the largest land mammal in Asia. It is the Asian elephant. Asian elephants are a fair bit smaller than their African cousins. I mean, the main differences between them are the ears, of course. The ears on Asian elephants are a lot smaller, but also these two distinctive lumps on top of their heads. And in Asian elephants, it's only the males that have tusks. But, like their African cousins, Asian elephants do have the same family herd structure. Of course, large herds are mostly made up of females and their calves, and males tend to leave at either adolescence or when they get mature. In fact, when male elephants get mature, they quite often head off on their own, and they can either be solitary or sometimes form loose bachelor herds where young male elephants will hang around with a older and more experienced bull elephant, whereas females always stay in big groups. And elephants are also very, very intelligent animals. In fact, it's actually said that the memory of an elephant is phenomenal. Hence the saying, an elephant never forgets. And of course, in Asia, elephants have been used as a beast of burden for centuries. In fact, they've been used in war as war platforms, but also they're used in national parks to go out looking for wildlife. And despite what many people think, elephants that are tamed and used in national parks are actually a lot more better treated than other elephants in some other places, because Asian elephants are used in national parks to go out looking for wildlife. And one of the main reasons for that is because wild elephants naturally inhabit the parks, so other wildlife like rhinos, tigers, buffalo and deer are used to the sight of them and won't be scared away. But they aren't always the easiest to film from though, because when my grandparents were in Chetwan National Park in Nepal a few years ago, they rode on the back of an elephant, and my grandpa said it wasn't the easiest to take a photo from. But it is the safest way to get through what is 3 metre high and aptly named elephant grass. And of course, with elephants, while they are some of the most beloved and adored animals on the planet, they are also animals that you need to respect, because as they can be quite dangerous. I mean, if it's females being protective of their young or just in a foul temper, they are the most frightening thing, because as they can outrun you, they can crush a car like a tin can, and they can kill a person with a single swipe of their trunks. And I've even heard of elephants flipping jeeps while protecting their calves. But there's a time in the elephant's year that make the males much more dangerous. It's called must, and it can happen for more than a couple of months. And basically when the male elephants, the bulls, go into season and they produce more than 10 times the amount of testosterone, and they've just got one thing on their mind, which is to find a female to mate with. And they can be really grumpy, angry, and unpredictable and aggressive. And of course, quite often, they would usually just ignore you because they'd just be moving off intent on finding a girlfriend. Unfortunately, Asian elephants are in trouble in the wild, and of course, unlike African elephants that are hunted for their ivory, that's not the problem for Asian elephants. I mean, the main problems for them are habitat loss and human-wildlife conflict. Because a lot of the places where humans have taken up for farming and plantations is where many elephants have walked on for generations, and that can result in crop raiding, which can lead to conflicts with humans, which involves them having to try and scare away the elephants, which results in elephants being harmed or people being killed by the elephants in retaliation. But also, up until a few years ago, elephants were taken from the wild to be used in circuses like the Ring Brothers circus, but that practice has since been banned, and Asian elephants are no longer used in circuses, and they've been relocated to sanctuaries and national parks that can look after them properly. But there are people working to protect elephants in the wild by telling people about better ways to avoid the conflict with them and preserving the habitats that they live in. Now I'm going to show you a bit of a comparison between the African and the Asian elephants. And here it is. This is a male Asian elephant. This is a male African elephant. As you can see, they come in different shapes and sizes. I mean, the ears on African elephants are bigger, and they don't have those big lumps on their heads. And also, they're larger in stature, and they have bigger tusks. Here is the Asian elephant's range. Now, the next animal I'm going to show you is one of the largest reptiles on Earth, and an animal that's been around on the planet since long before the dinosaurs. It is the gharial. Gharial are in the crocodilian family, which are the same family as crocodiles, alligators, and caiman. And of course, probably the most weird thing about gharials is their snout. It's very thin and narrow, but of course you can probably see on this one that it has a large growth on the snout. In Indian it's called a gurra, meaning pod, and that's used to create a humming sound to attract females. And a big male gharial could be just about 6 meters long and weigh half a ton. And they're no danger to human beings at all. I mean, they are purely fish feeders. I mean, what they eat is fish, crustaceans, and amphibians like frogs and toads. And of course, they have a different body build to other crocodiles, as well as their thin and narrow snout, which allows them to carve through the water quickly through shoals of fish. They also have different muscles in their legs and a lighter skull than other crocs, which makes them faster and more manoeuvrable than an alligator or a crocodile. But unfortunately, the gharial is probably the most threatened member of the crocodilian family. There are probably only 2,000 breeding pairs left in the wild. Fewer than even than tigers. And hunting for their skin, as well as overfishing and pollution of the rivers where they live, are thought to be the causes. Because it's actually a terrifying thought to think that an animal that's been around on the planet since before the dinosaurs could be coming to the brink of extinction because of us. But there are people working to protect them, like with breeding programs and working with local people to prevent them from polluting the rivers and overfishing. And slowly, the gharial lil population is beginning to increase. And another thing about gharial is that, like all members of the crocodile family, they can stay underwater for well over 2 hours, and how they do that is by rationing the oxygen in their blood and slowing their heartbeat down from just 3 beats a minute, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, they may be a very strange looking animal, but to humans, they're completely harmless. But to a fish, they are death in scales. This is their range. As you can see, they're quite widespread in India and Nepal, Pakistan, and just southeast of Iran, and even in Sri Lanka. The next animal I'm going to show you is the largest of the rhinoceros family and also one of the largest land mammals, the greater one-horned rhino. The greater one-horned rhino is the largest of the rhino family, and of course rhinos are found throughout Africa and Asia. They come in all different shapes and sizes, but they all share horns. But Asian rhinos only have one horn that's made of keratin, the same substance that our fingernails are made of. But also, the greater one-horned rhino is the most aquatic of all the rhino, and is rarely found far from water. And of course, they don't have very good eyesight, but they have a very, very keen sense of smell and hearing. And they are easily startled, and if they're surprised or feel threatened, they will charge at anything, even people. Of course, when defending territories, males battle with other males, and there's one thing that's always interested me, always amazed me about the one-horned rhino is just the way the skin is folded over the skeleton. You can see the ribs poking through, and these lumpy bumps around here are called tubercles all over the folds of skin. It just looks like a suit of armour. Of course, many of the animals that I find most interesting are carnivores. They eat meat. But every once in a while I come across a herbivore, which is an animal that feeds on plant matter, that is worthy of my time to consider, because they can be interesting when they're defending themselves, or more importantly, their family. Because the greater one-horned rhino is an animal that does have to be really good at looking after itself, because it has the Bengal tiger, which is the largest of the big cats, living right in its own territory. And if it gets the chance, a Bengal tiger will take a young rhino. So these guys have to be really good at protecting themselves and their young against the largest of the big cats and the top predator of Asia. And how they do that is just by having a really bad temper. But unfortunately, like their African cousins, the Asian one-horned rhino is endangered, and the main reason for that is poaching. Poaching for their horn, because rhino horn is sought after to be used for medicines, which do not work at all, but also to make Arabian dagger hilts, or even ground up and served in drinks, and it's pushing these animals to extinction. But there are people working to protect rhinos throughout Africa and Asia, and there are breeding programs for the Asian one-horned rhino. Now, as a comparison of the rhino species that I know of, here we've got the white rhino and the black rhino of Africa. Now, the white rhino is larger than the black rhino, and it has a flat mouth because it's a grazer, so it feeds on grass, and it's the most sociable of the rhinos. The black rhino is slightly smaller than the white rhino, with a beak-shaped mouth because it's a browser, so it feeds on low shrubs and trees. But then there's the greater one-horned rhino, which is the largest of the rhinos and the most aquatic. And there's the Sumatran rhino, which is found in the rainforests of Sumatra, but unfortunately the only place you can see the Sumatran rhino now is only in a few pockets of rainforest that aren't